It's your first season, Dominic, with Radical, but it's not your first season racing by any means, is it?
No, I was involved in single-seaters many years ago, and I finished that when I was around 21, 22. That was 10, 11 years ago, so I've had a long gap. I was looking for something to do, something that was challenging and would fill that gap, if you like. And Radicals, you know, it's a great championship. The cars are very competitive and it represents good value for money and is very consistent, so that's why I chose it.
Well, let's talk about the racing so far. I think you're fifth, aren't you, standing at the moment?
I am fourth or fifth, yeah, around there.
Now, it was at Silverstone that you were on the podium, I believe it was third, with the endurance race. So is it the endurance as opposed to the sprint that you enjoy?
I like the endurance. It's a funny thing because in the sprint you're kind of very tired at the end and it's obviously double the distance, but it always seems to come good and it's a good challenge.
So how are you feeling about today's endurance race? You've got the 40 minutes ahead of you.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure where I'm starting yet, but I'm looking forward to it. I imagine it will be in the top 10 somewhere and looking forward to getting on with it.
The grid for race 3 looks as follows. Oliver Barker lines up on pole with Bradley Smith alongside, and twice a race winner Jack Lang has Brian Caldwell for company on row 2. Steve Burgess and Stuart Maloney are on row 3 with Christian Jeffrey and Jack Manchester on 4, and it is the Harveys, that being Tom Harvey, that lines up alongside Mark Crader on row 5.
It's the final race of the day, 40 minutes endurance, and Dominic Jackson's got some work to do.
Thanks, Michelle. Here they come up towards the line. Oliver Barker on pole position. It's a fantastic start from Jack Lang from the second row of the grid, already promoting the orange car through and into the lead of the race in the early stages. So round through turn 1 they'll go. Jack Lang will lead the pack. Bradley Smith in second place, and Oliver Barker having to stick his elbows out to try and hang on to the place. He's got Steve Burgess very close for company. Locked brakes ahead as trying to attack for the lead goes Bradley Smith. Didn't quite work, and he's actually lost then a place to Oliver Barker coming back out of the Dean hairpin. So they turn their way through Yentwood Corner. Everybody safely through the first couple of corners. There's a little bit of contact further back, and I think that might have been Mark Crader who got together with Mark Maloney. There's also locked brakes, and I think Stuart Maloney having a problem as they came up towards Chapman. But everybody, I think, largely still unscathed, and through into the lead of the race has gone Oliver Barker from Jack Lang in second position. It's going to be Bradley Smith who's there in third place, and the reigning champion Steve Burgess, the blue car but with its yellow stripes, that sits there in the fourth position as they head up towards the braking area for Tarzan for the first time. So through the right-hander they'll go. It is Brian Caldwell that's there in fifth position. Jack Manchester in sixth, and in the gravel is Mark Crader. I thought he'd got involved at Yentwood Corner. That car sitting in the gravel trap, and I think I saw a safety car board there coming out. Yeah, yellow flags and the safety car board in the distance on the marshal's post. So that is going to mean that everybody will get themselves all back into single file order. Yellow flags and the SC board out on the starters gantry as well. So for the moment, cars needed to be cleared up, and that's another car that was involved. Haven't seen that, but Elliot Goodman's got a bike taken out of the front right of his car as Mark Crader steps away from his number 20 car, which is going nowhere in the gravel trap at what looks like Yentwood Corner. So lights on the safety car. Oliver Barker leading the pack round at the wheel of his blue car. Mark Crader's car undamaged, being towed out of the gravel. So it should be a very brief safety car period. In fact, the lights are already out. So it's now up to Oliver Barker as to when he wants to get the race back underway, because the BMW safety car will turn left into the pit lane, whereas the rest of the cars will turn up towards turn 4. Green flag waves on the gantry. We get the third and final race back underway. Oliver Barker leading the race. Good restart from him. Jack Lang just that little bit slower away, is coming under a shade of pressure from Bradley Smith, who sits there in what will be third position. It's Steve Burgess in fourth. It's John Caldwell in fifth, and the light blue car will tell you it's Jack Manchester in sixth as we go side by side for 7th and 8th by the look of things. So Oliver Barker leads. He's got 15 success seconds to spend in the pit lane. Second is Jack Lang. He's got an additional 5 seconds to spend. Third is Bradley Smith. He's got an extra 20 seconds to spend in the pit lane. And fourth is Steve Burgess, who has no additional time to spend in the pit lane as we go side by side for what is second and third position. Jack Lang, by the skin of his teeth, hangs on to second place. That has now brought, 2 cars together for third and fourth place, because Bradley Smith is under pressure from Steve Burgess, who's able to try and squeeze his way through at Graceland's corner. Bradley Smith braves it out on the outside round Graceland's, which gives him the inside line as they head in towards the braking area for Tarzan, and Bradley Smith looks as though he's just managed to hang on to third place. Burgess there in fourth, John Caldwell in fifth position, and well, Jack Manchester has gone missing from sixth place because it's now car number 64 Tom Harvey that's up into sixth place, and there is Jack Lang in the gravel trap at Tarzan. It looks as though he must have run wide just coming into the corner. That car is going nowhere by the look of things. We are still side by side, Steve Burgess and Bradley Smith still together, but Steve Burgess has managed to squeeze his way through and ahead of Bradley Smith, who is now coming under pressure from the number 66 car that sits behind in the hands of Brian Caldwell. They work their way through turn one. Brian Caldwell having a look at the inside of Bradley Smith, but his hand is aloft and it looks as though yet more safety car coming out. So just as they were trying to get away, another safety car period comes out, and this is the last thing that the cars need that have additional success seconds in the pit lane. Ideally, they need a full green flag for the first part of the race, because that allows them to get away, build a gap, and then try and make up a deficit in the second half of the race. Well, at the moment they can't build up a gap because that's two safety car periods in the early stages. Short safety car period again because Jack Manchester's car has been cleared out of the gravel at Tarzan Corner in the background, which means that again it is up to Oliver Barker to get this race back underway. Yet again another good restart from the race leader. Jack Lang still there in second place, still under pressure from Steve Burgess, with Bradley Smith there in fourth place, and then it's Brian Caldwell ahead of now Tom Harvey, number 64. That car leads the team challenge at this stage, where two drivers share the car. Tom starting, Father Brian will take over for the second part of the race. They, however, will have an additional 15 seconds to spend in the pits, so they've got lots and lots of work to do. Plenty of time still in which to do it, because we're still only in the early stages of this third and final race of the weekend. The battle at the moment is for second, third and fourth position. Dominic Jackson raises the dust coming out of Yentwood Corner. That puts him under pressure from number 61, which is the man from the Caribbean, Christian Jeffries. Just hung on to the place despite the rather dusty moment coming out of Yentwood Corner, which has sort of dropped him away from the pack that he was looking to try and mount a challenge with. The top five cars looking fairly equidistantly spread at this stage, but it is still Oliver Barker that leads from Jack Lang, who's still not shaken away the number one machine in the hands of the man from Nottingham, Steve Burgess. Steve, the reigning champion, been racing Radicals for a very, very good period of time. He's got the 3 times Radical champion, including, of course, the European champion a few years ago, Bradley Smith, directly behind him. And that little train of cars just feeding their way back up towards turn 4 as another lap is completed by Oliver Barker. He's got a small advantage between this little pack of cars that sits behind. It's sort of a quartet, isn't it, really, with the number 66 car of Brian Caldwell at the back of that little quartet of cars, and then a gap back before we then see the next of the cars, which will be Tom Harvey. He's just a little further adrift. Bradley Smith is so good on the brakes. We've seen that in all of the 3 races so far this weekend. Braking for the Dean hairpin is where he has enormous amounts of confidence in the brakes on the number 21 car. Really closes up again onto the coattails, or the Dunlop wheel tracks, for want of a better term, of Steve Burgess, but again he's not quite able to thread his way through, so they still reside in the same order as they turn through the left-hander at Piff Paff, and now will work their way yet again onto the steel straight. Of course, for Steve Burgess, all he needs to do is stay in touch with the cars ahead, because he knows that the car behind him, Bradley Smith, and the cars ahead of him all have additional penalties to spend in the pits. Also, the number 66 car doesn't have any additional time penalties in the pit lane. That's Brian Caldwell, so as long as he stays in touch, the race could very well come to him as well as things wear on. So back down the School Straight in towards the Brook chicane for the completion of another lap. It's sort of 5 cars now that have got themselves together for second, third, fourth, fifth and 6th position, all of the time whilst our race leader Oliver Barker builds the margin that ideally he wanted to build up from the very beginning of the race. A few seconds advantage will help him out come the pit stop window. Good battle going on for 7th and 8th place. Number 4 Dominic Jackson fighting away with Christian Jeffries. This is Brian Murphy side by side with Richard Baxter in towards turn 1. Brian Murphy on the high side, the light blue car of Richard Baxter on the low side, and it does look as though Mr. Baxter, Richard, has gone through here. Brian Murphy looks to try and fight back, but the slightly newer SR3 goes through and ahead of Brian Murphy, who's been racing Radicals for a few seasons now. Used to race Ginettas a few years back, and now that Richard Baxter had gained 1 place, he'll be looking to try and pick the pocket of Spencer Bourne if he can, who just lay ahead at the wheel of the largely black and purple number 8 machine. Through Chapman Curve they'll thread their way. They'll flick left again at Piff Paff. Brian Murphy under attack also from the next of the cars that sit behind. So no matter where you look, yet again, unsurprisingly, in the 2017 Radical Challenge Championship, there are battles to be had, and battles which I suspect are not going to be resolved until the checkered flag flies. Dominic Jackson again running a little bit wide. Again, Richard Baxter looking to try and squeeze his way through and ahead and gain another place. Not quite. Spencer Bourne takes the apex of Tarzan and chops across the nose of the number 88 car. So Richard Baxter is just going to have to keep his powder dry for the moment and try and see whether there might be somewhere else around the circuit where he's able to work his way through and ahead of the number 8 machine. So battles continuing on circuit as they head back off the infield section of the circuit onto the oval once more, and over the start-finish line they will thread their way, still with Spencer Bourne under this enormous pressure from Richard Baxter as they turn their way through turn 1. This is for places down towards the bottom of the top 10. Richard Baxter now has a good look up the inside, and surely he's going to outbrake Spencer Bourne at the same time as Spencer Bourne is trying to outbrake Dominic Jackson. 3 of them absolutely together. Great driving from all of them, and by the look of things the order still will remain the same. So Dominic Jackson looked as though he was going to lose a place there. He's hung on to it. Spencer Bourne equally as much still ends up in the same position, and Richard Baxter not too far away as yet again they turn their way through what is Piff Paff Corner. So back onto the steel straight comes this fantastic fight for 8th, 9th and 10th position, being headed by Dominic Jackson from Spencer Bourne. Then the light blue car with its pink flashes in the hands of Richard Baxter. You could argue the car behind isn't that far away either, and that is going to be the number 16 car that is in the hands of Stuart Maloney. Richard Baxter had another look at Spencer Bourne turning in towards Tarzan. Again it didn't quite work, and again that's cost him time. It's dropped him further into the clutches of the number 16 car of Maloney behind, who equally as much now is bringing Brian Murphy along with him as well. So we've almost got a quintet of cars for 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th positions turning their way round through turn 4, as we have here what is a great battle still going on between Jack Lang and Steve Burgess. This is for 2nd and 3rd places in the race. All of this is allowing Oliver Barker to pull away, but of course the car in 3rd place, the blue car with the yellow flashes, is the first of the cars in the field that come the pit stop window, has no success seconds to worry about. So for the man from Nottingham, Steve Burgess, he will already, I'm sure, be doing the maths in his head, already be trying to work out the deficits that exist between himself and his fellow competitors, and just ensuring that come the pit stop window, when he's on scratch and others remain stationary in the pit lane, that he is poised and ready to potentially take up the lead of the race. So out of Gracelands they'll go. Jack Lang still in 2nd place, an additional 5 seconds, as we say, he will remain stationary in the pit lane. That's the success seconds he has following his top 5 finish at Silverstone last time out. He actually finished in 4th position overall. 4th and 5th places both get an additional 5 seconds at the next pit stop race, and well, for the moment he's doing very well on track, hanging on to 2nd place. He's got the reigning champion Steve Burgess right behind him, and then as the pit lane is now open, you can see pit closed being held on the board, side of the board we can see. It will say pit lane open on the other. So at the end of this lap will be the first lap that people can dive for the pit lane. And we've almost now got 3 cars, haven't we, for 2nd, 3rd and 4th place, because number 66, which is Brian Caldwell, is not that far away. Onto the brakes, turning our way back off the oval circuit in towards the infield on this 1.94 mile Rockingham International Super Sports Car circuit. Thread their way from the Dean hairpin towards the right-hander at Yentwood, then climb uphill subtly towards Chapman, and then from Chapman it's a very, very short straight, which really only gives you the time to position the car from one side of the circuit to the other before you throw the car in towards the left-hander at Piff Paff. Further down through the order, this is Sean Byrne, the Irishman, fighting away with Konstantin Gukiev. They've been having a good little battle, and they are squabbling for places that are further down through the order at this stage. Sean Byrne, who moves across from the British GT Championship to race in the Radical Challenge, going very well indeed. So over the start-finish line comes Jack Lang, and now that is Brian Caldwell that's right behind him. So Steve Burgess must have dived for the pit lane, because the number 1 car, the blue car with its yellow flashes, is no longer there. It's going to be a very busy pit lane, because it is a very short pit stop window in the Radical Challenge. There's yellow flags also down at the Dean hairpin I just spotted there, so somebody's car being moved out of the way by our marshals, I would suggest, as Oliver Barker still continues in the lead. So it's still number 22 Oliver Barker that leads, but is yet to pit and serve the additional 15 success seconds at this stage. Into the pit lane is number 4 Dominic Jackson. Also Barry Liversidge is in. Number 21 by the look of things, that's Bradley Smith is in. Peter Tyler is vacating the seat of the number 80 car and giving way to Tom Gladys. Out of the pit lane goes number 61 Christian Jeffrey, There goes number 16, which is Stuart Maloney. So it is a very busy pit lane. And there is, Steve Burgess in the pit lane. The mechanics just having a look underneath his car. Sean Byrne is in at the wheel of car number 18. I also saw Spencer Bourne at the wheel of number 8 dive for the pit lane. John Caldwell comes to a halt as well. So it's all very busy down there with lots of cars being serviced. Joe Watt is just giving way to Adrian Watt, and back out of the pit lane comes Steve Burgess. Remember, that car had no additional time penalty, which puts him in a very strong position. Here is Jack Lang under huge pressure now from Brian Caldwell by the look of things. The two of those fighting tooth and nail at this stage. And as they come down in towards the braking area for what is the Brook Chicane, Brian Caldwell is able to go through just as Jack Lang is heading for the pit lane. So into the pit lane comes the number 2 car of Jack Lang as the rest of the cars feed their way back down the pit lane. This is Sean Byrne and Spencer Bourne returning into the race. So both of those cars at the bottom of the pit lane can take their finger off the pit lane speed limiter and start to accelerate their way back onto the track, whilst this car still leads at this stage. So it is still Oliver Barker that leads. We're at the back end of the pit window. Back into the race goes Jack Lang. Let's see where he might be able to feed his way back out. He only had an additional 5 success seconds to serve, so he should come back out in a reasonably strong position, but I suspect behind both Steve Burgess and possibly behind Brian Caldwell. Those were the leading cars inside the top 6 that had no additional time penalties to serve, but it will take another lap or so before the order shakes itself out fully here in the 3rd and final race at Rockingham for the weekend. Brian Caldwell coming in, so he comes to a halt now. Another one at the tail end of the pit stop window that opts to dive for the pit lane. Steve Burgess is looking good here, potentially to take up the lead of the race. He's just threading his way through the Brook Chicane, back up onto the banking at turn 4, and Brian Caldwell still remains stationary in the pit lane. He's flagged away by the team, accelerating his way back down pit lane, but I suspect may well not come out just ahead but behind Steve Burgess. Great fight going on with Bradley Smith, number 21, now threading his way through the order. Bradley had to remain stationary for an extra 20 seconds, and it is now this car that leads. Steve Burgess locking the brakes as well, so hard is he trying to anchor the car up for the Dean hairpin. So number 1 leads the race. Oliver Barker in the pit lane. He should come out behind Steve Burgess because Oliver Barker's got an additional 15 success seconds to spend in the pit lane. So the standard period that everybody stops for, plus an extra 15 thereafter, as a result of finishing second in the pit stop race that we had at Silverstone. So the Nielsen Racing prepared car of Oliver Barker threads its way back down pit lane exit, out onto the circuit, and where is he going to feed out? He is going to feed out just behind, by the look of things, Jack Lang. So yeah, Oliver Barker feeding his way back out onto circuit behind Jack Lang, and that is going to mean that the battle is back on again between those two. Number 2 Jack Lang looking to try and work his way back into potential podium places. So here they come up towards what is Chapman Curve at this stage. Last few cars still to head for the pit lane. I think one of those that hasn't stopped it yet is the number 88 car, which will be one of the last of the pit stoppers, which will be Richard Baxter. And this is now a fight for position as Bradley Smith squeezes his way up the inside of Spencer Bourne. Also trying to squeeze his way through was number 16 Stuart Maloney. But for Bradley Smith, that is another place gain. Richard Baxter, there he is. Yep, he's the last of the pit stoppers. I think that now means that everybody has conducted their mandatory pit stops, other than Richard Baxter, who's in the process of doing so, and I think number 57, Brian Murphy, who is going to be one of the last of the cars to stop. But the squabble's now starting to build again on circuit. This is Spencer Bourne having to stick his elbows out and try and hang on to the place. Stuart Maloney not looking as though he's going to finish on the podium in this race. We saw him on the podium in the first of the 2 races, but with an extra 5 seconds to spend in the pits, the Beijing driver is a little bit further out of contention this time through, as Oliver Barker dives up the inside of Jack Lang to take the place away. Another place gained by Oliver Barker. Well, he is well on course here to maybe finish on the podium. Jack Lang, we ride on board with. Oliver Barker has the inside line now as they head through what is Yentwood Corner. Oliver Barker just washing out wide a little bit going through that right-hander, but is able to gather it up, and indeed does hang on to the place. That is now going to put Oliver Barker up into what will be 3rd position. Jack Lang down into 4th place, so it's number 1 Steve Burgess that leads, the number 66 car of Brian Murphy in 2nd, and then these 2 cars in 3rd and 4th positions respectively. The blue car is Oliver Barker, the orange car is Jack Lang. Right behind Jack Lang is where we see car number 61. That is Christian Jeffrey. He sits there in 5th position currently as they thread their way out of what is Tarzan and back onto the School Straight. So what we always see is cars that have these pit stop penalties, or pit success seconds as they're known in the Radical Challenge, for the second part of the race. They've really got to work their socks off to pick their way back through the order. Here is our race leader, so Steve Burgess leads. That's the gap between himself and the white and black and red car of Brian Caldwell that sits there in second position. So not a huge amount of daylight between the first two cars. A bit of a gap back though before we see Oliver Barker in what will be third position. Jack Lang still sitting there at the wheel of car number 2 in fourth place, and right behind him is Christian Jeffrey, who's going well in this particular one. Let's see what he might be able to do towards the tail end of the race. So our race leader safely onto the brakes and turning his way through Tarzan for another lap. Steve Burgess looking as though he is well in control of the race at this stage. We've only seen a couple of wins for Steve Burgess so far this season. Both of them have come actually in the pit stop races. He claimed the third race of the weekend at Donington Park, which was a longer pit stop race. He backed that up with another win in the pit stop race at Spa-Francorchamps a couple of rounds ago, and is now leading the race here at Rockingham as he turns his way through turn 1 once more. This is Spencer Bourne still trying to shake away Stuart Maloney. Spencer Bourne at the moment looking good. The number 8 car hanging on to a good position at this stage. He is going to be down towards the bottom of the top 10 or so, and is looking to try and make good his escape from Stuart Maloney. So here they come. Through the right-hander again goes our race leader. That is Chapman Curve and up towards Fifth Path. So Steve Burgess is just starting to build a slight advantage between himself and Brian Caldwell. Elsewhere down through the order, this is number 57, Brian Murphy, under attack from Sean Byrne, the Irishman, who has got Barry Liversidge right behind him, and then the charging Tom Gladys by the look of things. Watch out for car number 80, Tom Gladys. He's taken that car over from Peter Tyler and is now working his way up through the order, the quicker driver of the two, taking behind the wheel, taking hold of the wheel for what is the second part of the race. Safely out of the Dean hairpin, sprinting their way up towards Yentwood. 5 cars together as one as they turn their way through the right-hander. And it is still Brian Murphy that's at the front end of this little squabble of cars. At the tail end of it, it's the number 55 car, which will now be in the hands of Adrian Watt for the second part of this race. And this is going to be for places down towards the bottom and just outside of the top 10. So, what, 10th through to something like 13th positions as they turn their way through Gracelands Corner. Great fight still going on. We've seen some fantastic racing in the 2 sprint races. Equally as much some good battles going on in the final pit stop race of the weekend. For number 80, Tom Gladys, he is looking to try and attack the number 18 car in the hands of former Caterham racer, former British GT racer Sean Byrne. Irishman's not going to yield there as they thread their way through the Brook Chicane. Tom Gladys now is going to have to try and sit himself in the slipstream at the wheel of his black and Dayglow car. Right in the slipstream of the number 18 car. Is he going to jink out? Yeah, heading up towards turn 1, jinks out and gets the car up the inside. So place gained for Tom Gladys, having just taken over that car from Peter Tyler. And that now means that Tom Gladys is going to be knocking on the door of a top 10 before too much longer. As Sean Byrne tries to start to fight back, but makes a big mistake heading in towards what is the Dean hairpin, and has to do a 360-degree spin to get the car back round and back out onto circuit. 2 places lost out to Barry Liversidge, lost out to the number 55 car of Adrian Watt, and has left himself more work to do there, Sean Byrne, unfortunately. That's going to drop him outside now of the top 12 and into the mid-teens almost. So, as for Spencer Bourne and what is Stuart Maloney, they can continue their great little squabble that they've got going on. And that is, as things currently stand, going to be for a place just towards the very bottom of the top 10 at this stage. As for what is Tom Gladys, well, again, following his little moment, he's having to try and fight his way back through. He's got himself back ahead of Brian Murphy now, so another place gained by Tom Gladys. As over the start-finish line comes this battle between number 8 Spencer Bourne and number 16 Stuart Maloney. They turn their way through turn 1, and as they now head up towards the braking area for the Dean hairpin, they are still very much inseparable. Spencer Bourne looking to try and hang on to the place. Stuart Maloney, who we've already seen twice on the podium so far this weekend, a couple of third places for the man from Barbados, looking to try and mount a challenge, but as yet he has not again been able to squeeze his way through. But But it is, either way, a great little fight that the pair of them are getting on, working hard. The Suzuki engine revving away, the Dunlop tyres working hard, the Radical chassis continuing to do what it needs to do, and this man here out front leading the race. He's put a lap now on the number 91 car of David Frankland. Here is what is second place, which is Brian Caldwell, and he is now, without question, being caught by the number 22 car of Oliver Barker. Oliver, having had an extra 15 seconds where he's had to remain stationary in the pits, is closing in on the 66 racing car in the hands of the man from Southampton. So onto the brakes goes Brian Caldwell, and now is looking to try and hang on to the place and deal with David Frankland's car that he needs to lap before too much longer. So I'm sure David will move out of the way. Huge amounts of racing experience in Radicals over the years. The number 91 car, with its light blue and red and day glow livery, will be shown the blue flags by our marshals. And then Brian Caldwell will look to try and squeeze his way through. Another place gained by what is Tom Gladys, as locked brakes cause Dominic Jackson to head onto the grass. So Dominic Jackson having lost the place there. And Brian Caldwell, hugely under pressure, has to dive up the inside very decisively of David Frankland and put a lap on the number 91 car. So it is still Brian Caldwell that's hanging on to that position, but Oliver Barker has closed right onto the coattails of the second place car, and the fight for the final two podium places is very much on. Arguably, you could say that Oliver Barker is the quicker of the two, but what he needs to do is try and find a way through and past Brian Caldwell, who is not exactly going to make it easy. Over the start-finish line they come, and Brian Caldwell, who took race 2 third on the road but was given a time penalty, which dropped him off the podium, would dearly like to hang on to second place. A podium either way would be a great way for him to end what has been a mixed weekend, but Oliver Barker's having another good look at the inside as they headed towards a Dean Hairpin. Again, the door is closed, and again it is still Brian Caldwell that comes out with his nose just ahead at the wheel of the number 66 car. Oliver Barker's having another nibble, this time as they head in towards Yentwood, and again Brian Caldwell just chops across the nose. Rightly so, he's entitled to do that because the door was going to close either way. He was always going to have to turn in towards the corner, but great racing from both cars, wheel-to-wheel stuff, nose-to-tail stuff as well, and at some point surely Oliver Barker will be able to pick the pocket of Brian Caldwell, but for the moment Brian is doing a superb job of hanging on to the position safely out of Gracelands, up towards the braking area for Tarzan. Yet again they will go towards the right-hander, get on the power nice and early, try and straighten up the exit of the corner if you can, which allows you to get on the power that little bit early, and that's exactly what Brian Caldwell is doing. The gap between himself and Oliver Barker this lap through is a little bit bigger than it was on the lap before, not by a lot, but an extra half car length, and that's all he needs in reality, Brian Caldwell, as he sweeps his way back up towards turn 4, but makes a big mistake coming out of turn 4. The car almost in the wall there coming out of turn 4, and that is just what he needs, Oliver Barker. One slight mistake from Brian Caldwell, he had to get off the gas as the car went sideways, and he's able to sweep his way through and take second place away from Brian Caldwell, who's going to fight back this time on the run in towards turn 1, but the job is done for Oliver Barker. It took him a few laps to do it, but eventually there was just a slight chink in the armour of the man from Southampton, and it is the graduate out of the Radical SR1 Championship, Oliver Barker, who now goes through to take up second position. And for Brian Caldwell, well, he is down in third, but a fairly safe third at the moment. He's still got time to attack the car ahead if he wishes, but he's got plenty of time in hand between himself and Jack Lang, who is a fairly distant fourth place at this stage, the orange car. A long way into the distance is he. So the race now just starting to settle down as we enter the last lap or so of it. And it is a long way out front, Steve Burgess, and it is this second car, the number 22 car, the blue car with its white flashes of Oliver Barker, that sits there in second position, and already just starting to fall away is Brian Caldwell in third position as he heads onto the brakes and turns his way through the Brook chicane yet again. This was the point at which he made that very slight mistake on the lap prior. This time, however, there's no such mistake for what is Brian Caldwell. Spencer Bourne is still under pressure by the look of things. He has got Stuart Maloney right behind him, and then John Caldwell as well, which is Brian's brother. They're fighting away for 7th, 8th and 9th positions at this stage. Spencer Bourne has had a busy old race, rather disappointing retirement in race number 2, but it has overall been by far his best race weekend so far, as he turns his way back up towards turn 4, trying to keep at bay Stuart Maloney, a driver that's raced with us at Silverstone. He's raced with us here at Rockingham, has travelled all the way from Barbados to compete. Rockingham very different to Bushy Park, which is the local circuit that he knows like the back of his hand. But despite his relative lack of experience with Rockingham, he's been going well this weekend, and now he's looking up the inside of Spencer Bourne. Is he able to squeeze his way through? No, locked brakes. Spencer Bourne takes the apex of the corner and very bravely hangs on to the position. So it's still Spencer Bourne in 7th position. It's still Stuart Maloney there in 8th place, and it's still John Caldwell in 9th position. But time is running out for the order to shuffle, because the checkered flag is not far away now as they turn their way through Chapman once more and up towards Piff Paff, out onto the far reaches of the circuit, and it's still somehow the same order at this stage. Watch out, however, for the car that's now closing in on them, which is Tom Gladys, car number 80, because he's looking to try and join in. In fact, he is now joining in to try and make it 4 cars fighting over what will be 7th, 8th, 9th and now 10th positions. So they thread their way back onto the school straight, and it is 4 cars as one, all fighting for position. And as they weave one way, weave the other, all trying to outfox each other. It's a bit like playing a game of poker, isn't it? You don't want to show your hand too early, and if you show it as late as you possibly can, you stand yourself the best opportunity of not allowing the person behind to respond. So another lap completed, another lap in which it's still Spencer Bourne at the front of this little quartet, and now Tom Gladys is looking to try and dive his way through at turn 1. They are on the last lap as well, so opportunities to overtake running out, and we await the arrival of our race leader, which is going to be Steve Burgess. Over the start-finish line comes Steve Burgess to claim his 3rd win of the season in the 2017 Radical Challenge Championship. Oliver Barker finishing in 2nd position, and well, Brian Caldwell caps off his weekend at Rockingham with a podium place. He will finish in 3rd place ahead of Jack Lang, who comes over the start-finish line now and will finish in 4th position. 5th place will go the way. That looks as though it is going to be Richard Baxter that will finish in 5th position. Confirmation of the results then, it's the 3rd win of the season for Steve Burgess, and the charging Oliver Barker's in 2nd place. Brian Caldwell 3rd, ahead of Jack Lang, Richard Baxter, and Tom and Brian Harvey, the leading team car, in 6th place. 7th is Spencer Bourne, ahead of John Caldwell, Stuart Maloney, and then Peter Tyler and Tom Gladys, who complete the top 10. Top 3 drivers on the podium. Let's hear from the winners.
Steve, that has obviously helped you in maintaining your champion title.
Yeah, the way it was going this morning, I thought the championship was dead and buried, so to get a win, it's clawed a few points back, but yeah, still not a great day, but nice way to end it.
And how was it in total, the endurance race for you, this particular one?
I knew I had a bit of an advantage because the guys in front all had penalties from the previous round, so I knew if I could stick with them, and then hopefully after the pit stop I'd come out in the lead, which was the case, and then just manage the gap to Ollie till the finish.
Ollie, a good end to your weekend.
Yeah, really pleased with that. It's been a really difficult weekend with a DNF in the first race, but to get 2nd in the final race, I'm really happy to be up here on the podium.
This is your first podium here in the UK this season, is that right?
That's right, yeah. I think last year I was fairly quick, podium most time if I didn't crash, and I came into this season fairly full of confidence. But I think the pace upped, you know, we got some new drivers came in that were all fast, and all of a sudden I was relegated down to about 5th on pace. And I've just wrestled with that and overdrove, and it just doesn't work, you know. So hopefully I've sort of cooling the red mist down a little bit, and maybe I'd like to think this is sort of the new me now. Stop drinking and trying to just get a bit of control and sort of try and drive technically well, and hopefully this is the result.
Well, a completely different podium for the endurance race there. And that's it from Rockingham. We're going to take a short break for the summer, but the Radical Challenge Championship will be back in August at Snetterton.